Building your new bid begins with a bid criteria input page. The first time you use this application, you may want to spend a few minutes first reading some of the instructions and experimenting with the bid results that a given set of criteria produces. The good news is that once you tune a set of criteria that best matches your preferences, your settings will always be saved. While you still may want to update dates wanted off or vacation days, since those preferences may change monthly, almost all your settings should remain the same. Since all of us are either commuter or non-commuters, and most of us either bid to maximize days off or credit hours, another option to get started with your criteria is to select a preset setting and then fine-tune from there. There are 8 categories to sort your line, and then a vacation corrector that, when selected, updates days off to account for vacation days. You can select some or all of the criteria by clicking on a tab and expanding the category. Once you have completed the settings, you then order the criteria from top to bottom by their importance to you. Selecting no criteria simply returns the original bid lines in the sequence they are published. So let's start with a clean slate by resetting all criteria. To begin, expand the line category by clicking on the top tab. To enable sorting with this criteria, as with all criteria, select Enable. All possible lines that can be awarded generally fall into one of 7 categories shown here. Either a line is pure, meaning it just contains 3-day, 2-day, or 1-day trips, or it's a composite line, meaning it contains some combination of these trips. Rank these 7 possibilities from 1 being the most preferred to 7 being the least preferred. There's no need to use all possible 7 rankings if you are indifferent between 2 line types. Assigning lines the same rank helps in sub-criteria sorting, so it's best not to reflect differences in the ranking if this does not truly reflect your preferences. As an example, since I'm a commuter, I want to maximize 3-day trips and minimize the chances of getting a line with just 1-day or 2-day trips. Also, I'm indifferent between a couple line types as well, so I usually rank my trip types as follows. As a final note, as you know, there are also a few 4-day trips floating around out there. For the purposes of sorting with this criteria, 4-day trips are treated as if they are 3-day trips. This is done because these lines are structured very similar to 3-day lines already, and helps to prevent criteria setting process from becoming more complicated. 4-day lines are still easy to spot on the bid lines and overview pages for those who are interested. Next, let's look at days of the week. Simply rank the days of the week from 1 to 7, with 1 being the most preferred to 7 being the least preferred. As with the line category section, assign days of the week the same when you are indifferent between them. I prefer working Monday through Wednesday with my weekends off when possible, so I'll assign my rank as follows. Moving on to trip pay, there are 2 basic ways to set your criteria. First, begin by enabling bid sorting with pay criteria. Choosing strict sort always weights lines of different pay differently. Choosing flex sort, on the other hand, weights trips according to pay differently only if they fall into different categories listed here. For example, suppose trip A has 85 credit hours and trip B has 86 credit hours. Using strict sort with lower pay lines preferred, trip A would be weighted heavier than trip B. Using flex sort, these trips would be given the same weight since they fall into the same category. Unless trip pay is really a top priority for you, generally I would recommend almost always using flex sort. Important dates has 2 basic sections, those dates in the month you want off and those dates in the month you would like to be scheduled. For the dates off, select up to 6 different dates that you wish to avoid. Lines that have your preferred dates off will float higher in your bid. Or perhaps you would like to be scheduled during the VJA periods in hopes of dropping or flipping a trip. In that case, select the days off you want to be scheduled and the application will weight lines accordingly. Selecting flight attendant position lets you set your flight attendant position preference and is handled differently than the other criteria on this page. You're actually only setting your preferences within a standard ABC line right now, so there's no reason to consider D position at this point. For those of you who want to prioritize your overall bid first by flight attendant position ahead of all other criteria, this option will be available to you on the Submit Bid page under Final Options. Now, I least prefer A lines, but I do want other criteria to be considered, so I'll enable this criteria and rank the positions as follows. Next, you can enable the overnight criteria and select up to 4 different overnight locations you'd prefer. Selecting this criteria gives higher weight to lines that contain these overnights and allows these lines to float to the top of your bid. I have family in Portland, Seattle, and St. Louis, so I always select these airports here. Trip time of day allows you to express your preferences for either AM lines, PM lines, or commutable lines. Commutable lines are those lines containing at least one commutable trip. As a commuter and a morning person, I'd rank my trip types like this. Number of days off is set up basically just like TripPay, except with Flex Sort, there are just 2 categories. Flex groups the days off into those lines with greater than 17 days off and those lines with 17 or less days off. Also, there's a selection box that tells the algorithm how to count the number of days off. The default uses the number of days off in a month, which is what is reflected on bid sheets, while selecting the checkbox uses the number of days off in a line, which can be up to 3 additional days. Since maximizing days off is important for me, I choose strict sort and check the box. Finally, if you have vacation during the month, input those dates here. The algorithm will then make vacation day corrections for days off and pay. Lastly, ensure all the criteria you would like to consider is selected, and your last very important step is to drag the tiles from top to bottom in order of their preference and importance to you. For me, I order my list as follows to reflect my preferences as a commuter looking to maximize time off. When you're ready, click Sort. The application will then rank all lines according to your set criteria. Please allow a few moments for the algorithm to run. Now you're done with setting your criteria, and next time all of this will already be set for you. A quick look at the sorted lines, and I see my favorite lines are all my top choices. 3-day trips, during the week, with lots of days off, and with 3 or 4 commutable trips in a line, with some overnights in St. Louis, Portland, or Seattle. Transitioning to the middle of my bids, I still have trips with lots of days off, but now more commutable lines with my preferred overnights are not present. Finally, look at the very lowest choices, and you see that the lines that are left include 1-day and 2-day trips, very few days off, and working the weekends. These are the lines I wish to avoid, and accordingly, the application ranks these at the bottom of my bid. You can watch my next video on lines and overview pages, and I'd love to get your feedback, which you can send to me through the contact page. Thanks for watching.